With us now is Bloomberg Tech's own Ed Ludlow. Ed, just give us the latest when it comes to the mission status and what happens before tonight's big move.
Yeah, so the crew inside the Orion spacecraft are essentially in safe orbit. They conducted a burn this morning that took them from low Earth orbit to higher Earth orbit, and in a sort of elliptical fashion are going around the Earth until about 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern time. That's when the mission directors and flight directors have to decide if they are a go for the translunar injection, the burn that you described, which propels Orion the 250,000 miles or so to the far side or dark side of the moon. And that's why we're all here. That's the big part. And so there is risk, but there are testing systems. At some point, the crew has to sleep, but that's what we're tracking toward.
The dark side of the moon, the far side of the moon. What's back there?
Yeah, I mean, the point of the mission in part is observation of what's on the surface of the far side of the moon, right? This is a resources story. Water, minerals, oxygen. The value of the moon is in part strategic from that resources standpoint. There's also an important moment where the Orion capsule and spacecraft is going to lose contact with Houston and control. And you're all thinking, watching Bloomberg Tech, what? The crew, they're going to lose contact on the far side? Yeah, obviously. The moon's in the way. But that is also important, and they planned for that and prepared for that. And, it's going to be a really significant moment when, through what's called a free return trajectory, the moon's gravitational field and Earth's gravitational pull swings the Orion spacecraft back around in a figure eight and send it back to Earth. So there's risk here, but it is record-breaking in terms of what they're trying to achieve. Well,
we're talking about space, Ed. We got to ask you a different question about orbit, and that has to do with shares of Globalstar. They're rallying today, up about 9%. This after we learned that Amazon is in talks for a buyout. Now, Apple owns about 20% of this company. What would this do for Amazon and its, quote-unquote competition for providing satellite service, web-based satellite service, or satellite web-based service for, and really competing with SpaceX?
It's interesting because the financial terms and what they're kind of agreeing to buy isn't disclosed. But what Globalstar has is very valuable licensed spectrum. That having Constellation in orbit is not really about the hardware that's up there, but the spectrum that it occupies. That's part one. The other part is that it's a kind of go-to-market story, right, where Globalstar is authorized and regulated in markets around the world. It has ground infrastructure corresponding to the Constellation-based infrastructure. That would help Amazon, with its own space-based internet ambitions, get into those markets, even if the satellites that are up there are about cell connectivity in places where terrestrial cell signal doesn't reach. That's all a big part of it. And you're right that the history of Globalstar is that right now that's how you get emergency messages on your iPhone or make emergency calls. But the bigger picture is just access to the space that's up there.